Holmes. And standing right behind her was Sunny Balwani. Sunny was the company's COO and Holmes's secret boyfriend, though nobody at the company knew about their relationship. He had zero background in medicine or diagnostics, but he made up for it with pure intimidation. Balwani ruled through fear, screaming in meetings and threatening lawsuits. His favorite line was, "If you don't believe in this company, you should leave." A lot of people did, quietly and quickly, sometimes after just a few days. The machine was failing, the labs were lying, and the team was falling apart. But the public, still completely enchanted. Holmes was still being called a visionary. Walgreens was still preparing their nationwide launch. Every lie eventually meets its truth. For Theranos, that reckoning came from the inside. It started with whispered phone calls between former employees, people who'd left the company but couldn't shake what they'd seen. Then two names emerged that would blow everything wide open: Tyler Schultz and Erica Chung. Both were young idealists who joined Theranos to change the world. Both saw enough to realize the dream was built on lies. Chung noticed that test results were all over the place, the kind of wild inconsistencies that would get any legitimate lab shut down. She raised concerns. Her emails got ignored. Her badge access got revoked. She left quietly. Schultz was the grandson of George Shultz, the former Secretary of State who sat on Theranos' board. Tyler saw fake demos, manipulated data, and a company obsessed with secrecy over science. He tried to warn his grandfather. "Grandpa, Theranos is lying about everything." "Tyler, dear boy, Elizabeth is a visionary. The machine doesn't work. Sometimes visions take time to materialize. People are getting wrong medical results. Innovation is messy, Tyler. Grandpa, they are committing fraud. Have you considered that maybe you're just not understanding the bigger picture?" When he spoke up externally, Theranos went nuclear. The company launched a full intimidation campaign. Legal threats, surveillance, private investigators following whistleblowers around. They watched Holmes, tapped phones, and threatened Tyler with lawsuits that would have bankrupted him, all before his 25th birthday. But the truth was already out there in the hands of Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou. Carreyrou started digging. He met sources in parking garages and diners like some kind of medical Watergate. He verified documents, made calls nobody wanted to return. When Holmes and Balwani caught wind of the investigation, they panicked. They tried everything to kill the story before it ran. Lawyers, threats, legal notices to employees they suspected of talking. But Carreyrou kept pushing. In October 2015, the Wall Street Journal published the exposé that shattered the illusion. The piece laid it all out. Theranos wasn't using its own technology for most tests. The Edison couldn't deliver on its promises. Results were dangerously inaccurate. Patient safety was at risk. The myth of Elizabeth Holmes was officially dead. Holmes went into full damage control. She denied everything, called the article false, claimed Carreyrou was a misogynist with an agenda. She went on CNBC and said,
"This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy. Then they fight you. Then you change the world."
But behind the scenes, panic was spreading fast. Walgreens froze their partnership and launched an internal investigation. Safeway, which had spent over $350 million preparing to integrate Theranos testing, pulled out completely. Doctors stopped trusting the results. Patients came forward with horror stories about false diagnoses that had upended their lives. Then the regulators showed up. In 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services conducted an inspection that revealed a complete disaster. Theranos had failed to meet basic lab standards. Results were unreliable across the board. Quality control was practically non-existent. The punishment was swift and brutal. Theranos was banned from operating blood testing labs. Holmes was stripped of her license to run a lab for 2 years. The company was ordered to void 2 years of blood test results, basically admitting that thousands of medical decisions had been made using garbage data. Investors were furious. Doctors were livid. Patients felt betrayed. And Holmes? She doubled down, insisting the technology still worked and promising they'd fix everything. But the house was already burning down. By 2018, Elizabeth Holmes no longer controlled her own story. The magazine covers were gone, the TED Talks were over, and in their place came something much colder. Formal charges from the SEC. Holmes and Balwani were accused of massive fraud. deliberately misleading investors while patients received false test results. All those years of promises and billion-dollar valuations were now being called what they really were: lies. Holmes cut a deal with the SEC. She didn't admit guilt, but agreed to step down, pay a $500,000 fine, and accept a 10-year ban from running any public company. For a moment, it looked like she might escape the worst of it. Then the Department of Justice filed criminal charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, crimes that carried up to 20 years in prison each. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about freedom. The trial was delayed by the pandemic, then by Holmes's pregnancy. When it finally began in late 2021, it felt like Silicon Valley itself was on trial. Its hype, its blind faith in charismatic founders, its willingness to believe in magic. The prosecution laid out years of deception. Former employees testified about being silenced. Investors described pitches that were pure fiction. Lab reports showed evidence of editing, altering, sometimes outright forgery. Then Holmes took the stand, something her lawyers probably wished she hadn't done. For 7 days, she tried to rewrite the narrative. She said she believed in the mission, never meant to mislead anyone. But then she made it personal, accusing Sunny Balwani of abuse and control.
Sunny controlled every aspect of my life.
Including your decision to defraud investors?
Well, yes.
Including your fake deep voice? That wasn't...
I mean, that was all natural.
Ma'am, we have recordings. The courtroom was riveted. Some saw courage, others saw desperation. In January 2022, the jury delivered their verdict: guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. She was acquitted on charges related to patient harm, but the damage was done. Balwani's trial followed. Unlike Holmes, he didn't testify. The evidence spoke for itself: emails, investor presentations, altered documents. He was found guilty on all 12 counts and sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. Holmes got 11. By then, Theranos was long dead. The company dissolved in 2018. Its labs shuttered, its machines scrapped. Walgreens quietly exited. Investors lost hundreds of millions. Patients were left with confusion and, in some cases, trauma. Elizabeth Holmes promised to revolutionize medicine with a single drop of blood. What she actually delivered was broken trust, false hope, and one of the biggest scandals in Silicon Valley history. The machines are silent now, but the story lives on, not as a tale of innovation, but as a warning about what happens when belief replaces proof, when charisma substitutes for competence, and when one drop of blood becomes one lie too many. Holmes didn't start out trying to con the world. She believed her own hype. And for a while, so did everyone else. But in the end, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and Theranos never had any.